The silence of deep space surrounded the archaeological vessel Stellar Seeker as it moved slowly through the darkness between distant stars. The ship's powerful sensors reached out into the void, searching for anything of interest among the countless specks of light and dust. Chief Archaeologist Do-Won Park leaned forward at his station on the observation deck, rubbing his tired eyes. He had been staring at holographic displays for hours, looking for any sign of ancient civilizations. The soft blue glow of the screens lit up his weathered face, highlighting the gray streaks in his black hair. After 20 years of space archaeology, he still felt the same thrill of discovery that had drawn him to this field. His assistant, Jin Lee, sat at her own station nearby. She was young and eager, fresh from the academy, but she had proven herself reliable over the past 6 months. Her fingers moved quickly across the control panels as she monitored the sensor readings. The quiet hum of the ship's engines and the occasional beep of equipment were the only sounds on the deck. Another empty sector, Do-Won muttered to himself, making notes on his datapad. They had been searching this region for 3 weeks with nothing to show for it. The Stellar Seeker was the best archaeological research vessel in the fleet, but even its advanced sensors couldn't find what wasn't there. Suddenly, a sharp chime cut through the quiet. Jin's hands froze over her controls as she stared at her screen. Do-Won looked up, recognizing the proximity alert sound. His heart began to beat faster. They had found something. "Professor Park, you need to see this," Jin called out, her voice tight with excitement. Her fingers flew across the control panel, bringing up more detailed scans. "We've detected a massive structure approximately 30,000 kilometers ahead. It's huge." Do-Won hurried to her station, leaning over her shoulder to look at the readings. The object was indeed massive. Initial scans suggested it was at least 2 kilometers long. As the Stellar Seeker drew closer, more details became clear. "It's a ship," Do-Won breathed, his eyes widening. "An ancient warship." He quickly moved back to his own station, bringing up the main view screen. The image that appeared made everyone on the deck gasp. Floating silently in the void was a dark shape that dwarfed their research vessel. Its hull was scarred and pitted from countless impacts, telling stories of ancient battles. Despite its apparent age, the ship's design was both beautiful and terrifying. Sleek lines suggested great speed, while the obvious weapon ports spoke of tremendous power. "Run a full spectrum analysis," Do-Won ordered, his voice steady despite his racing heart. "I want every detail recorded." The crew jumped into action, their training taking over despite their excitement. As the scans came in, Do-Won's excitement grew. The ship matched nothing in their extensive database of known spacecraft designs. This was something entirely new, perhaps from a civilization they had never encountered before. "The hull is made of materials we've never seen before," Jin reported, reading from her screen. "The alloy composition is strange. It's incredibly dense, but our sensors suggest it's lighter than it should be. That shouldn't be possible with known physics." Do-Won nodded, making notes rapidly. "What about power readings?" "Nothing active, but..." Jin paused, frowning at her display. "There are traces of some kind of energy signature throughout the ship. It's very faint, almost like an echo." The chief archaeologist walked closer to the main viewport, studying the massive ship with his own eyes. Something about it made him uneasy, though he couldn't say why. Perhaps it was the way the hull seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it, or how the weapon ports looked ready to spring to life despite their apparent age. "Prepare a boarding team," he decided, "full environmental suits and all safety protocols in effect. I want to see the inside of this ship." As the crew rushed to prepare for boarding, Do-Won couldn't shake the feeling that they had found something far more significant than just another derelict vessel. The ship's design spoke of advanced technology, yet it appeared ancient. How had it come to be here, floating alone in the darkness between stars? He had no way of knowing then that this discovery would change everything, not just for him and his crew, but for every spacefaring race in the galaxy. As he watched his team prepare for boarding, Do-1 Park couldn't have imagined that the dead warship they had found was far from dead. It was merely sleeping, waiting for the right moment to awaken. As the horizon limped away from the encounter, Han Sung stared at the casualty list on his screen. The names of good people, friends, looked back at him. The Rakeri ship didn't pursue them. They had made their point. This wasn't about destruction or conquest. It was a message: stay away. In his report to Earth Command, Han wrote a simple conclusion. The Rakeri cannot be reasoned with through any known diplomatic means. They are not merely hostile. They are apex predators, and they view us as prey. Conventional military tactics proved ineffective. We need a new approach, or humanity's expansion into space ends here. As the Horizon made its way back to Earth, its crew shaken but alive, none of them could have guessed that their devastating encounter would lead to one of the greatest breakthroughs in human-alien relations. But for now, all they knew was fear, and the certainty that they had survived an encounter with something that defied their understanding of civilized space. The Interstellar Defense Council chamber buzzed with nervous tension. The massive circular room, located deep beneath New Seoul, was filled with military officers, scientists, and government officials. They had gathered to discuss the recent Rakeri attack on the UES horizon, but no one seemed eager to speak first. Dr. Kim May stood quietly at the presentation podium, watching the council members whisper among themselves. Her research notes were ready, organized carefully on her datapad. She knew her theory would sound crazy to most of them, but the evidence was there for anyone willing to see it. Admiral Park Jin's voice cut through the murmurs. 12 dead, 28 wounded, and you're telling me we should try to understand these monsters? His face was red with anger. We need to build bigger weapons, stronger ships. We need to show them humanity won't be prey. Several council members nodded in agreement. The room's massive screens showed footage from the Horizon attack. Rakeri warriors tearing through metal barriers with their bare hands, moving with terrifying speed and coordination. Dr. Kim took a deep breath and pressed a button on her console. The attack footage paused, then split into multiple frames. Please, look carefully at these images. Notice how the Rakeri move, their formations, their attack patterns. She highlighted different sections of the footage. Here, see how they split into groups of 3. How they coordinate their movements. Now watch this. She played another video, this one from Earth's historical archives. It showed a wolf pack hunting. The council members shifted uncomfortably as the similarities became clear. The Rakeri used the same flanking tactics, the same coordinated strikes. Even their communication, short barks and growls, followed similar patterns. We've been approaching this all wrong, Dr. Kim explained, her voice steady despite her racing heart. Every species that's encountered the Rakeri has treated them as either enemies to be destroyed or potential diplomatic partners. But look at their behavior. They're not mindless beasts, but they're not operating on the same social principles we expect from spacefaring civilizations. She pulled up more data. Their ship designs mimic predatory sea creatures. Their armor resembles natural protection found in Earth's apex predators. Even their attack on the Horizon, it wasn't meant to destroy the ship. It was a territorial display, a warning to stay out of their hunting grounds. Admiral Park scoffed. So what? They're animals. Dangerous animals that need to be put down. No, Dr. Kim replied firmly. They're intelligent predators with a complex social structure we haven't bothered to understand. She played more footage, this time showing the Rakeri retreat from the Horizon. Look at their withdrawal. Perfect coordination. No stragglers. Clear command structure. These aren't mindless beasts. They're following sophisticated pack behaviors. She moved to her key point. Humanity has a unique history among spacefaring races. We're the only known species that successfully domesticated multiple apex predators. Dogs, cats, even working relationships with killer whales. We learned to communicate with and gain the trust of creatures that could easily kill us. The council chamber grew quiet as she continued. The Rakari operate on similar instincts to Earth's pack predators. Their aggression, their territoriality, their social hierarchies. We've seen this before. We didn't make dogs our companions through technology or diplomacy. We did it by understanding their nature and working with it, not against it. Dr. Kim pulled up her proposal on the main screen. I want to assemble a team of xenobiologists, animal behaviorists, and traditional animal trainers. Let us study the Rakari from this new perspective. Instead of trying to force them into our diplomatic framework, let's try to understand their natural social structures. Admiral Park stood up. This is insane. You want to treat an advanced spacefaring species like a pack of wild dogs. No, Dr. Kim corrected. I want to acknowledge that intelligence can exist in forms different from our own. The Rakari have space travel and advanced technology, but their social structures appear to be based on predator-pack dynamics. That's not inferior, it's just different. And humanity has unique experience in bridging this exact kind of gap. She showed one final piece of footage, ancient video of a wolf trainer working with a wild pack. We've done the impossible before. We turned wolves into dogs, made killers into companions. The Rakari may be more advanced, but the principles could be the same. The council chamber erupted in heated discussion. Some members shouted that it was too risky. Others argued that they had nothing to lose. Dr. Kim waited patiently as the debate raged around her. Finally, Council Chair Lee Bin raised his hand for silence. Dr. Kim, what exactly are you proposing as a first step? Let me work with the captured Rakari from the Horizon incident, she replied. Give me 6 months to test my theory. If I'm wrong, we've lost nothing. If I'm right, she paused, looking at each council member in turn. We might just turn humanity's greatest threat into our strongest allies. The vote was close, but in the end, the council approved her proposal. As Dr. Kim gathered her materials, Admiral Park approached her. I think you're going to get people killed, he said bluntly. Dr. Kim met his gaze. Maybe, but we're already dying. At least this way. We're trying something new. She tucked her data pad under her arm and headed for the door. Her real work was about to begin, and she had a feeling it would either make history or get her killed. Either way, humanity's approach to the Rakari was about to change forever. The observation room was cold and quiet except for the soft hum of computers and the occasional whispered conversation. Dr. Kimney sat hunched over her workstation, her eyes red from staring at screens for hours. Behind the reinforced viewing window, 3 Rakari moved around their enclosure, their armored bodies reflecting the artificial lighting. Song Mai stood beside her, making notes as they watched the aliens' movements. For the past 2 weeks, they had been studying the captured Rakari nonstop, looking for patterns that others had missed. The creatures were smaller than humans expected up close, about the size of large wolves, but their natural armor and incredible speed made them formidable. Look at this, Dr. Kim pointed to her screen, playing footage from earlier that day. See how the largest one always eats first, and how the others maintain a specific distance while waiting their turn. Song Mi nodded, making another note. Just like wolf pack hierarchy, the alpha eats first, establishes dominance through food priority. She zoomed in on the footage, and look at their posture, heads lowered, no direct eye contact. Classic submission behaviors. The team had transformed an entire section of the research facility into a dedicated Rakari study center. Walls were covered with comparative anatomy charts, behavior analysis graphs, and timeline maps of every recorded Rakari encounter. They had even brought in experts who had worked with Earth's most dangerous predators. Play the interaction from this morning again, Dr. Kim requested. The screen showed a feeding session where a researcher had accidentally made direct eye contact with the largest Rakari. The creature had immediately displayed aggressive behavior, but in a very specific way. It's not random aggression, Song Mei pointed out. Look at the pattern. Warning display first, raising those armor plates, then the vocal warning. The actual aggressive movement only comes after both warnings are ignored. They have a clear communication system. Dr. Kim pulled up another video, this one from an old nature documentary about wolf rehabilitation. The similarities in behavior patterns were striking. Every spacefaring race has tried to approach them as equals, she said quietly. They sent diplomats, tried to establish common ground through technology or trade. But look at how the Rakari respond. They treat every direct approach as a challenge. The team had made another interesting discovery about Rakari physiology. Their natural armor wasn't just for protection. It was a complex communication system. The plates could shift and change position, displaying different patterns that seemed to convey specific messages to other Rakari. One of their youngest team members, a fresh graduate named Kang Wu, had spent days cataloging these patterns. It's like a physical language, he explained during the evening briefing. Different combinations mean different things. We've identified patterns for aggression, submission, greeting, and even what might be curiosity. The breakthrough came during the third week. They were watching footage of a failed diplomatic mission when Song Me noticed something crucial. Look at how they reacted when the ambassadors tried to establish eye contact, she said excitedly. Now watch this. She played footage of wild wolves encountering humans for the first time. The reactions were almost identical. Direct eye contact was seen as a challenge, an aggressive act that triggered defensive responses. Dr. Kim spent that night reviewing all their data, putting together a new theory. The next morning, she gathered her team. We've been thinking about this backwards, she explained. We keep trying to find ways to make them understand us. But what if we learn to communicate like them instead? The team began developing a radical new protocol. They studied thousands of years of human experience with predator domestication, from the first wolves that approached human campfires to modern animal training techniques. Everything was analyzed, adapted and modified to work with an intelligent spacefaring species that happened to operate on predator pack instincts. The key is understanding their social hierarchy, Song Mai explained during a presentation to facility leadership. Every Rakari group we've observed has a clear power structure. They don't want to negotiate. They want to know where everyone fits in the hierarchy. They began implementing small changes in how they interacted with their captive Rakari. No more direct eye contact. Body language was modified to match Rakari submission and dominance signals. Even the feeding schedule was adjusted to match their natural patterns. The first positive results came unexpectedly. During a routine feeding, one of the Rakari displayed a new plate pattern none of them had seen before. It took them hours to analyze the footage, but when they did, excitement spread through the team. It's not an aggression or submission display, Dr. Kim announced, her voice trembling with excitement. Based on the context and timing, we think it's their equivalent of asking a question. They're trying to understand us too. As the team worked late into the night, documenting their findings and refining their protocols, Dr. Kim looked through the observation window at the sleeping Rakari. We spent so long trying to make them understand our civilization, she said softly to Song Me, that we never considered learning to understand theirs. Their report to the Defense Council was comprehensive. They had identified key behavioral patterns, developed preliminary communication protocols, and most importantly, proven that the Rakari were capable of non-aggressive interaction when approached correctly. Now came the hard part, convincing the Council to let them test their theories with conscious human Rakari interaction. As Dr. Kim prepared her presentation, she knew they were on the verge of either a historic breakthrough or a catastrophic failure. Either way, they had already learned more about the Rakari in 3 weeks than humanity had in years of violent encounters. The future of human-Rakari relations would depend on whether humanity could accept that sometimes the path to understanding an alien species meant acknowledging that not all intelligent life thought like humans did. The red Martian landscape stretched endlessly outside the reinforced windows of Research Station Alpha. Inside, Dr. Kim now watched nervously as Officer Choi Tai prepared to enter the Rakari containment area. After months of research and preparation, they were finally ready to attempt direct contact. The observation room was packed with researchers, security personnel, and medical staff. Everyone held their breath as Choi checked his protective gear one last time. He carried no weapons. Their research showed that even the presence of weapons triggered aggressive responses from the Rakari. "Remember the protocol," Dr. Kim spoke softly into her microphone. "No sudden movements. No direct eye contact. If they display raised armor plates, immediately show submission posture." Choi nodded, his hand steady as he approached the airlock. He had spent weeks practicing Rakari body language patterns, learning to move his body in ways that mimicked their communication style. As a former handler of Earth's most dangerous predators, he understood the importance of physical communication. The airlock hissed open. Inside the containment area, 3 Rakari immediately focused their attention on him. Their armor plates shifted, creating patterns that the team had learned to recognize as warning displays. Choi moved slowly, keeping his head lowered and his body language submissive. He could hear the Rakari moving, their clawed feet clicking against the floor. The largest one, which they had designated as the Alpha, moved forward. Heart rate elevated but stable, someone reported from the medical station. Blood pressure within acceptable range. The Alpha Rakari made a low growling sound, its armor plates fully extended in a dominance display. This was the crucial moment. Every previous attempt at contact had failed here, usually ending in violence. But Choi had studied hundreds of hours of footage. He understood what the Rakari was actually saying with its display. Slowly, deliberately, he lowered himself into a traditional submission pose, keeping his head down and exposing his neck. The observation room was dead silent. The Alpha Rakari approached Choi, its powerful body coiled and ready to strike. It circled him once, twice, examining him from every angle. Then, to everyone's amazement, its armor plates slowly relaxed. "It's accepting his submission," Song Mai whispered excitedly. "Look at the plate patterns. That's the acceptance display we documented." The next part of the protocol was even riskier. Still moving slowly, Choi began to straighten up. He kept his movements smooth and deliberate, transitioning from complete submission to a more neutral stance. The Rakari watched intently but didn't attack. Then Choi did something that made several observers gasp. He raised his head and squared his shoulders, displaying dominant body language. It wasn't a full challenge, but rather a demonstration of rising status within the pack hierarchy. The Alpha Rakari's reaction was immediate. Its plates shifted rapidly, creating complex patterns across its body. Everyone tensed, expecting violence. Instead, the creature made a series of short barking sounds and lowered its head slightly, acknowledging Choi's rise in status while maintaining its own dominant position. "My God," Dr. Kim breathed. "They understand. They actually understand." Over the next hour, Choi continued to interact with the Rakari, using the body language patterns they had developed. The aliens responded consistently, showing clear understanding of the communication attempts. Most importantly, they showed no aggressive behavior as long as proper pack protocol was followed. The breakthrough came when the Alpha Rakari approached Choi with a different plate pattern, one they had never seen before. Instead of backing away, Choi held his ground and mimicked a calming gesture they had observed between Rakari pack members. The alien stopped, its head tilting in what looked remarkably like curiosity. Then it did something unprecedented. It deliberately altered its plate pattern to match Choi's calming gesture. "They're learning," Song Mai said, furiously taking notes. "They're not just responding to our mimicry. They're actively trying to communicate back." The session continued for another 30 minutes before Choi carefully withdrew from the containment area. As soon as he was through the airlock, the observation room erupted in celebration. They had just achieved the first peaceful, interactive contact with the Rakari in recorded history. In the debriefing room later, Choi sat with Dr. Kim and her team, still shaking with adrenaline. "It was amazing," he said, his voice full of wonder. "When you're in there with them, you can feel their intelligence. They're not just reacting. They're thinking, analyzing, trying to understand us just as much as we're trying to understand them. Dr. Kim was already planning the next phase. We need to build on this. Now that we've established basic communication, we can start introducing more complex interactions. Maybe even begin teaching them human gestures while learning more of their plate patterns. The team worked late into the night, analyzing footage of the historic interaction. They documented every successful communication, every response, every new pattern they observed. What they had achieved was just the first step, but it was a step that changed everything humanity thought they knew about the Rakari. As the Martian night fell outside, Dr. Kim looked at the screens showing the now calm Rakari in their containment area. For the first time, she allowed herself to feel real hope. They hadn't just proved that peaceful interaction was possible. They had shown that the Rakari were capable of learning and adapting their behavior just as humans were. The path ahead would be long and challenging, but they had finally found the key to understanding these complex creatures. The question was no longer whether humans and Rakari could coexist, but how quickly they could learn to communicate with each other. The future of interspecies relations had changed forever in a single day, all because they had finally learned to speak the Rakari's language, not with words, but with the ancient language of predator-pack dynamics that both species, despite their differences, somehow shared. The Galactic Council's main chamber on Europa Station was filled with representatives from every known spacefaring civilization. They had gathered to witness something many had claimed was impossible: footage of humans and Rakari working together. On the massive central screen, a video played showing a human handler named Yunhua moving confidently among a group of Rakari. The alien's armor plates shifted in complex patterns as they responded to her commands, working together to move cargo and operate equipment. "This must be fake," the Centauri representative declared, his crystalline form glowing with agitation. "The Rakari cannot be tamed. We have tried for centuries." Dr. Kim stood calmly at the podium, waiting for the murmurs to die down. "We didn't tame them," she explained. "We learned to speak their language. There's a crucial difference." The next video showed a mixed human Rakari crew performing maintenance on a spacecraft. The Rakari used their natural strength and agility to reach places humans couldn't, while the humans handled the technical aspects. Their cooperation was seamless, built on months of careful training and mutual understanding. "Impossible," a Proxian observer whispered, all three of its eyes wide with disbelief. Lead trainer Yunhua stepped forward to explain their breakthrough. She had spent months refining the communication protocols developed by Dr. Kim's team. The key was recognizing that the Rakari's social structure isn't primitive. It's just different from what we consider conventional civilization. She played more footage, this time showing the training process. "We don't force them to abandon their natural behaviors. Instead, we work within their existing social framework. Each mixed crew functions like a pack, with clear hierarchy and established roles." The evidence was hard to dismiss. Station after station reported successful integration of Rakari workers. Accident rates dropped to nearly zero when Rakari crews were properly trained and integrated. Their natural abilities made them invaluable for dangerous space work, while their pack mentality meant absolute loyalty to their human packmates. "But how do you prevent attacks?" the Proxian representative demanded. "They are predators by nature." Yunhua smiled. "Exactly. They are predators, and like all pack predators, they are fiercely protective of their own. Once a human is accepted as part of their pack, the Rakari will defend them with their lives." To demonstrate, she showed an incident from a mining operation where a human worker was nearly crushed by falling equipment. 2 Rakari crew members had instantly moved to save him, using their armored bodies as shields. The news spread across the galaxy like wildfire. Trade ships began requesting Rakari crew members. Space stations that had once forbidden Rakari ships to dock now had special facilities for mixed species crews. The impossible had become routine. Not everyone was happy about the change. Some species felt threatened by humanity's unique ability to work with the Rakari. Others worried that the predatory species was being exploited. but the Rekari themselves seemed to thrive in their new roles. Dr. Kim's team documented everything. They observed how Rekari social structures adapted to include humans, how their communication patterns evolved to incorporate human gestures while retaining their own unique expressions. Most fascinating was how young Rekari began instinctively mimicking human behaviors, just as human children in the mixed communities began understanding Rekari play patterns. "They're not just tolerating us," Dr. Kim explained during a research presentation. "They're genuinely integrating us into their society, just as we're integrating them into ours. It's a true cultural exchange." The biggest surprise came when a Rekari pack requested to join a deep space exploration mission. Their natural abilities and instincts proved invaluable in unknown territory. They could sense dangers that human instruments missed, and their protective nature meant additional security for the human crew. Yunhua continued developing new training protocols. She discovered that each Rekari pack had slightly different patterns and behaviors, like different dialects of the same language. She created a comprehensive database of these variations, helping new handlers understand the subtle nuances of Rekari communication. "Watch their juvenile members," she would tell new trainers. "They're the most adaptive, the most eager to learn new patterns. They're our bridge to the future." The success of the program led to unexpected developments. Other species began requesting human assistance in dealing with difficult alien races. Humanity's unique history with predator domestication had given them insights that other civilizations lacked. One evening, as Dr. Kim watched a group of human children playing with young Rekari in a station park, she realized how far they had come. The children showed no fear, understanding instinctively how to interact with their alien companions. The Rekari juveniles had adapted their play behavior to avoid hurting their softer human packmates. "We've created something entirely new," she told Yunhua, who stood beside her. "Not just cooperation between species, but true understanding." Yun nodded, watching as a young Rekari carefully helped a human child climb a play structure. "They protect their own," she said simply. "And now, we're their own." The galaxy had to accept a new reality. Humanity had not conquered or tamed the fearsome Rekari. Instead, they had done something far more remarkable. They had reminded both species of ancient truths about cooperation, trust, and the unexpected ways different beings could form bonds of loyalty and understanding. As night fell on the station, the mixed crews of humans and Rekari continued their work, their cooperation so natural now that few remembered a time when it had seemed impossible. The savage species that had once terrorized the galaxy have found their place, not through force or diplomacy, but through the simple, profound act of being understood. The alarms at Mars Station Alpha blared through the quiet Martian night. Captain Han Sung raced to the command center, his heart pounding. The Meridian Consortium ships had appeared without warning, their dark hulls barely visible against the starlit sky. "Status report," he barked, sliding into his command chair. His second-in-command, a massive Rekari named Kex, as humans pronounced it, stood beside him, armor plates shifting in patterns of alert and aggression. 3 consortium warships, Officer Liju reported, her fingers flying across the control panel. "They're deploying dropships. Multiple boarding pods detected." Han shared a quick look with Kex. They had trained for this, but training was different from reality. The Meridian Consortium was notorious for their biological weapons and their attempts to weaponize other species. Now they had come for the Rekari. "Sound general quarters," Han ordered. "All integrated teams to defensive positions. Kex, signal your packs." The Rekari commander let out a series of sharp barks, his armor plates displaying command patterns. Throughout the station, other Rekari responded, their own plates shifting to acknowledge the orders. The first explosions rocked the station's outer walls. The consortium forces were trying to breach multiple points simultaneously. They had expected to find a research station defended by standard security forces. Instead, they found something unprecedented: humans and Rekari fighting as one. In the East Wing, a consortium strike team broke through. They were met by an integrated defense team led by Yunhua. The Rakari moved with incredible speed, their armored bodies providing cover for their human packmates who returned fire from protected positions. "They're using stun weapons," Yun shouted into her comm. "They're trying to capture, not kill." The realization spread quickly through the defending forces. The consortium wanted live specimens, both Rakari and human handlers. They hadn't counted on the depth of the bond between the two species. In the command center, Han watched the tactical display as more enemy forces breached the station. "Kex, take your pack and reinforce Section C. I'll coordinate from here." The Rakari commander's plates shifted in a pattern Han had learned to recognize as disagreement. "Pack stays together," Kex growled in his rough approximation of human speech. "You come too." Han started to argue, but he knew better. To the Rakari, leaving a pack member behind was unthinkable. He grabbed his emergency gear and followed his second-in-command into battle. The corridors of Mars Station had become a war zone. Consortium forces, in their sleek black armor, found themselves facing an enemy unlike any they'd encountered. Human Rakari teams moved with perfect coordination. The Rakari's natural armor and strength, combined with human tactical thinking and technology, created a devastating defensive force. Dr. Kim worked frantically in the secure lab, destroying research data before it could fall into enemy hands. A group of young Rakari refused to leave her side, their plates showing patterns of protective determination. They had grown up in the research facility, and to them, Dr. Kim was as much pack as any Rakari. The tide turned in Section D. A consortium team had cornered a group of human technicians, only to find themselves attacked from behind by their intended quarry. The untamed Rakari they had hoped to capture turned out to be anything but, as integrated teams systematically cleared the section. Han and Kex led their mixed team through the station's maintenance tunnels, outflanking the main consortium force. The human captain had learned to read Rakari body language as well as any handler, and his team moved like a well-oiled machine. "Remember," Han told his forces, "they want us alive. Use that against them." The Rakari understood perfectly. They launched a series of feinting attacks, drawing the consortium forces into prepared kill zones where human defenders waited with heavy weapons. In orbit, the situation was just as chaotic. The station's defense ships, crewed by both species, proved far more effective than the consortium had anticipated. Rakari space crews, with their natural ability to function in zero gravity, performed maneuvers that human pilots could only dream of. The breaking point came 3 hours into the battle. The consortium commander, frustrated by their losses, ordered his forces to switch to lethal weapons. The order was intercepted by the station's communications team. Han's voice crackled over the general frequency. "To all consortium forces, you came here expecting to find animals you could cage. Instead, you found a family you cannot break. This is your only warning. Withdraw or face the consequences." To emphasize his point, Kex let out a bone-chilling roar that echoed through the station's corridors. Every Rakari in the facility responded, their combined voices creating a sound that made even veteran consortium troops hesitate. The enemy commander made his fatal mistake. He ordered an all-out assault. What followed would be remembered in military histories across the galaxy. Human and Rakari forces moved as one, their coordination perfected through months of living and working together. The consortium forces found themselves facing not two separate species, but a single unified force that combined the best of both worlds. The battle ended as suddenly as it had begun. The remaining consortium forces retreated to their ships, leaving behind their wounded and dead. As the adrenaline faded, the true significance of what had happened began to sink in. Han stood with Kex in the command center, watching the enemy ships retreat into deep space. "They'll be back," he said quietly. The Rakari commander's plates shifted in what Han had come to recognize as a smile. "Pack stronger together," Kex replied. "Always." Around them, humans and Rakari worked side by side to repair the damage. "Treat the wounded and strengthen their defenses. The consortium had hoped to drive a wedge between the species. Instead, they had proven just how unbreakable their bond had become. In her partially destroyed lab, Dr. Kim looked at the security footage of the battle. "They still don't understand," she said to no one in particular. "You can't weaponize trust. You can't break a pact by force." The Meridian Consortium had learned a costly lesson. The Rekari were no longer just fearsome warriors. They were family. And humans would fight just as fiercely to protect their Rekari packmates as the Rekari would fight to protect their human ones. The story of the Mars Station defense spread across the galaxy like wildfire. In every spaceport and on every colony world, people shared recordings of human and Rekari forces fighting as one. The footage showed Rekari warriors using their armored bodies to shield human packmates, while humans provided covering fire and tactical support. It was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Dr. Kim's research facility became a pilgrimage site for xenobiologists and diplomatic teams from dozens of species. They all wanted to understand how humans had accomplished what centuries of advanced civilizations had failed to do. The answer, as Dr. Kim patiently explained, was surprisingly simple. "We stopped trying to change them," she told a group of visiting scientists. "Instead, we learned to understand them." The Rekari were never savages. They were just speaking a language no one else had tried to learn. Training centers sprang up across human space. Yunhua's comprehensive training protocols became the standard for all human Rekari integration programs. Young Rekari, raised among humans, showed even greater ability to adapt and communicate across species lines.